He entertained my childlike ingenuity and encouraged my effort. I used that walking stick everywhere, convinced that I would not move an inch on my own thing. I can attest to this because I remember when I was grandma, and I saw the stick and I wanted to play with it, and grandpa said, "No, no, that's ordinary stick." The next trip to the house was sometime after the first. When I returned, I inquired about my walking stick and other treasures, and without fail, he showed me every trip, every time I had. My sister and I did not live in Jamaica like our cousins, so these trips were special. I collected mementos to take back only to be heartbroken by the audacity of Air Jamaica's improbability of accepting my treasure. But not to worry, I got back and kept them safe. She knew that upon my return, I'd be inquiring about the treasure. Just as I did, made him who he was to me, caring, considerate, diligent, my safe space. One of the last times I saw my grandfather was just after graduation. He worked slower now. Just before I got much, but still had joy and a smile that could melt me and make me forget everything else. He was magnetic to me in that way. We sat, ate soup, and munched on cane and roast corn, and just enjoyed each other's company. Please sleep well, my delight, my loved one, my grandfather. Now it's the time for my tribute. I am the man. My grandfather was always a quiet man. One of the few persons I have known to understand the value of silence. I admire how both grandma and grandpa loved each other till the end, and through the various challenges life threw at them. Grandpa was very industrious and hardworking, and as a testament to that, he constructed the house they both lived in. Each corner of their home being a testament to his hard work and dedication. At the time of his first stroke, you could see that even though he was having physical challenges, he still had a desire to continue fulfilling responsibilities around the house. Even when he was not physically capable, he consistently did things to be helpful. I remember the moments of laughter and the wisdom he imparted. I give thanks to God, knowing that he is no longer in him, and he left behind a legacy of love, hard work, and the beautiful memories we will cherish forever. May he rest in peace.
I'll be reading a tribute from Melanie. My grandpa, always the first to greet us when we arrived for our visit, followed by his faithful companions, countless dogs over the years, each one affectionately called Bobby. Grandpa was often quiet in nature. He appeared serious, but this disappeared in moments when there was a good laugh. Grandpa loved to laugh. I remember him as a diligent man also. Every morning, he was the first one up and about outside, tending to either his dogs, chickens, or the plants. His handiness appeared limitless. Even the repair he did to the rolling lawn chair that my cousins and I took countless turns pushing each other back and forth across the veranda and space. He was a man of few words, but his love and care for us spoke through his actions. Grandpa may be gone from this life, but never from our hearts. And I'll be reading a tribute from Tina. Jueith was daddy to me. I remember him collecting me after basic school, and he let me jump in the potholes of the roads. I remember him babysitting me when my sister was being born. I have a fond memory of him cleaning in the way men do, and he threw away what was actually the new baby clothes. And I remember all the time carefully shared with him the things that made me unhappy. As an adult now, I realized that the comfort came from just listening to me and actually hearing me. I remember hearing Mommy call out, "Jay!" And that meant he was around you. And RJR News was turned up so high that he would come in for lunch. And after he came in from the bush, I got to pick off the backhands he couldn't reach on his back. When I moved to Kingston, my daddy called me every single morning to wake me. Every single morning. Then, there was the year his birthday and Father's Day were the same day. Daddy called to tell me he wanted 2 gifts. I remember around 2010 when his stroke happened. Daddy ended up at Eagle Hospital in Kingston and I was nearby. I ran up there and cried at his neck. Daddy said, "You really come up here, come embarrass me?" Fast forward to when Daddy was in the hospital late last year. A nurse was surveying the room and Daddy said, "Hello, is me you looking for?" He wasn't. Daddy would always mention that the old man paid up when asked how he was, which made me sad. We talked about how much we meant to each other. Daddy literally promised me many more years last year. I know you tried, Daddy, but I'm glad you're pain-free and with Mommy now. I miss you both. But you know how much you both meant to me, and I can never repay you for saving my life. I'll never get to squeeze up beside you in your one chair again. I know you both want me to be happy, and I've done work on that. Daddy, I suppose you didn't want to go a full year without Mommy. Miss you, Daddy. Love you. That concludes the tribute from my children.
Thank you. Started on this side. Okay. Thank you.
Good morning, church. My name is Ordin Toba. The words that come to mind are happy and sad. Some call it mixed feelings, but today, to me, they are distinct. Of all the cousins that are capable of doing a remembrance, I am privileged to be the one speaking, offering a tribute to our late uncle, Jueith Tucker. Thanks to the family out there for this honor. I'm grateful to be standing with me, siblings and cousins. Richard, a cousin, Julia, a brother, Bridget, a sister, Leroy, a brother, Joel, a brother, Angela, a cousin, and Philip. And we are standing here to represent the rest of the large Tucker clan. We are also experiencing much sadness, as injected in this time is the real situation where we acknowledge that we're here to honor the last of a generation, the last surviving child of Lovina and Charles Tucker of Dennis Mountain in St. Louis. Okay, here's my first admission. I don't know who Jueith is. Well, if you said Uncle JT, that's a different story. All of us are familiar with that name, Uncle JT. My father, his name was Alfred Tucker, and everybody called him Koopy. Yes. One of the strong characters about Koopy was his love for family. I remember the days when he would take 4 or 5 us on his Suzuki 50 bike up Devil's Race Course. And my daughters are just learning Devil's Race Course. From Livingston up to St. Mary to ensure that we get connected with the family. Alright? Machine must have locked. This way. Please patient with me, please. Goes. This is where we got familiar with that's the family of Grandma Vina. And in my mind's eye, I remember her. I don't know if Philip remembers the rocking chair on the veranda. She was there overlooking the guinea tree and the June plum tree at the front of the yard. I'd always be looking forward to the guinea and the June plum when I get there. I didn't meet Uncle JT until the funeral of Grandma Vina. This was maybe because he had moved away to live in Highgate. This was where I met several of my cousins, some of whom are standing here. Interestingly, as I researched for this tribute, I discovered that there have been many similarities between my father, Kupi, and his brother, JT. The first of which I discovered was their love for family. Next, Kupi moved away to Livingston. JT moved to Highgate. Next, I recognized the commonality in their work ethic. Hard workers. Each had carpentry and farming in their repertoire. I did find some differences though. Kupi was a taller person, somewhere about 6 feet. JT was a little bit shorter. Kupi was a domineering figure. JT was calm. He was a calm personality. Kupi was a champion horse when it comes on the children. 15 I counted. Well, you see, I'm being corrected. I counted 15 other persons had other numbers. Well, Uncle JT and Auntie can help me, it's 8. Right, that's what she counted, right? Okay. These 2 brothers, Alfred and I can say Jueith. I'm learning the name. It may be my grandson's name. It's of a family of 10 siblings. They had one unique bond of love for each other. I recall my father talking about the exploits that they across the length and breadth of St. Mary. And some of the names I'm familiar with: Hamilton Mountain, Jack's River, Aracabessa, Galena, as they went to the river, as they climbed trees, etc. Uncle JT, we recall, was the second to last child of Lavina and Charles Tucker, and the younger of the 2 boys. He was followed in age by the youngest. Other children in the family include Laura, Laurel, Dell, Mesmer, Mabel, Sybil, and Lillian. Oh, what were those names, right? There was apparently an unofficial debate as to who was the favorite of the 2 boys. Some said it was Kupi because he resembled Miss Vina. Others said it was Uncle JT because he had features of both. Although, from my record and research, I found no notable conflict between the brothers, except the difference of age of 12 to 14 years. And we can talk about that. and the aunt, right? What is known is that Uncle Jueith was also closely bonded to his sisters, especially Dell and Lilith. There would be constant visitation among these siblings who remained in St. Mary. Uncle Jueith was remembered as a builder, a renowned carpenter, hard-working and diligent. It is recalled that there was a stool at the family house for years that remained for a long time, and I don't think it's still there. Philip can tell me. This stool was the handiwork of Uncle Jueith. He lived at the family house for a long time and seemed not interested to leave. Well, not until one, and I'll tell you, Miss Darky, yes, St. Aunt Cynthia, pulled him away. Notwithstanding, even while he was working at toil aisle, he would constantly come back every evening to get his portion of his vineyard's day. He was remembered as a quiet soul, much a peacemaker, and so even when there was dispute between siblings or cousins, he would be the one to quell the fight. He was recalled as a photographer. One fight was recalled to be over a photograph that was taken of cousins. One wanted to play with it, the other wanted to preserve it. Uncle Jueith stood in and stopped the fight. He was remembered as wearing a distinctive tam, lead to one side. Among the children who lived at the house, at the family house, was my eldest brother Bruce. Bruce, we learned, passed a few years ago. Others who lived at the house were my sister Claire, brother Leroy, Aunt Lilith, Dell, cousins Colin, Richard, among others. My brother Bruce, as I recall it, had gotten baptized and was quite excited when Uncle Jueith allowed him to wear his own clothes to church. Uncle Jueith did well in farming, and Richard remembered a particular potato crop that they worked together to reap at a property at one. It is recalled that Uncle Jueith was one who, during difficult times, provided the final home for his father Charlie until he died. The adjectives that can be used to describe Uncle Jueith include humble, quiet, calm, a man of wisdom, kind. Somebody remember the times that you pass by and you bring goodies and money for them. I can't recall the circular candies, and I don't know where they made them, but I remember some circular candies I love. He had a special love for his family, including his half-brother Busher, by Star. I'd like to take, therefore, the opportunity on behalf of my cousins and siblings to extend deep condolences to the family of our Uncle Jueith. Tony, Elton, Ken, Max, Althea, Lennox, Sharon, grandchildren and great-grandchildren. We join in sharing with you this great loss, even though we can hardly imagine the pain you're experiencing. We are, however, happy to be standing with you today to lend our support and to strengthen you. I'm personally happy to have been able to reconnect with Aunt Cynthia and Uncle Jueith before their quick passing. We pray that you remain strong and God bless you.
Turn it on.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, friends all, good morning. The death of our father is the end of an era and the start of a new chapter in our lives. He was the last of a generation, the last sibling on both sides of the family to pass on. Our mother, who predeceased him by only 7 months, was also the last of her siblings. And our father passing now brings an end to a generation of talkers. Jueith Josiah Tucker, known as JT to his contemporaries, was born on June 20, 1931 to Charles and Lavina Tucker in Geddes Mountain, St. Mary. Charles and Lavina owned plots of land in the area where they lived and built a reasonably large house for their sizable family. Our father was one of 2 sons among 8 sisters, and life would not have been easy in the 1930s, especially with his father going off to fight in the Second World War, and his mother having to take care of all the children on her own. As soon as they were able, JT and his brother Alfred, also known as Hoopy, had to fend for themselves and help to take care of their mother and sisters. There's a saying, never waste a good crisis. So while World War II disrupted lives, it also presented opportunities. During the war, the focus of the world was on the war effort, defeating the enemy. Any other travel, for pleasure or otherwise, was severely restricted. After the war, much like after COVID, there was an explosion of travel, and Jamaica's modern tourism industry had its early beginnings as construction of properties on the North Coast took off. Our father was born and grew up in Geddes Mountain, as previously noted. This is only a few miles in the hills above Orocamessa in St. Mary, and within easy reach of the North Coast by bicycle or motorbike. There, along the North Coast, he sought and gained employment, and there he developed his skill in the building of hotels. We can recall as young children him working at Marrakesh, now Couples Tower Island, Boscobel Beach, now Beaches, Boscobel Resort, and Silver Seas. The irony of this is that our father always saw himself as a humble man. And when as adults we tried to get him to spend some time relaxing in these very hotels, he would decline. When our parents got married and moved away from living close to the North Coast to living Clonhead and then Highgate, our father still worked in Orocamessa, Ocho-Rios area, sometimes spending time during the week at the family home in Geddes Mountain. When that early phase of hotel construction slowed down, he got involved in the construction of residential properties on the North Coast. He was a very dedicated worker, as my cousin stated. There was a case where he was contracted to build a house, and despite having difficulty collecting payment from the property owner, he continued with the construction and payment of the workers out of his own pocket until the owner made good and was able to repay. As he grew older, he started working closer to home in Highgate, where the family finally settled. He built his own home, that of his close friends, the Livingstones, and my house, among others. One of the greatest things our father helped to develop in us was a passion for reading. On his way from work on the North Coast, he would stop in Port Maria and buy comic books for us. More for my brothers than for me. Some of those included The Phantom, Green Lantern, and Tarzan, and what we called in those days, cowboy books.
All right.
This generated in us a love for reading. He was not a scholar, but he certainly made scholars out of us. This love of reading has been passed on to our children and grandchildren. Thank you, Daddy. He also taught us humility, hard work, practicality, creativity, devotion, and dedication to family and work. For most of his working life while in Geddes Mountain, Daddy relied on his bicycle, and for a short period, a motorcycle as his primary means of transportation. However, while we were living in Harmony Hall, he was fortunate to arrange a dependable ride with a close family friend, Alan Livingstone, now also deceased, who was also employed in Port Maria. During his time away from work, Daddy became very active around the home, regularly preparing meals for the family and tending a small plot of land where we did a bit of farming. So just like Koopy, he also did farming. In the early days and well into our teenage years, Daddy took on the role of family barber for his sons and myself, because I used to also sport an afro. He made sure the boys got their regular haircut. According to Max, he still cannot recall if there was a barber shop in Highgate at the time. In addition to that special haircut, Daddy also made sure he gave his sons a bath on the morning of their common entrance examination in the 1960s. He saw to it. It was a very special day according to him, and they were not scrubbing their skills hard enough. Although he did not receive formal education beyond elementary school, that his skill as a master tradesman enabled him to support our mother financially while she studied midwifery at the Victoria Jubilee Hospital in Kingston, and also to provide education for his children in the late 1950s and early 1960s. As a child, I remember my daddy being the one to assist with school projects, from the clock to the kites. He encouraged my brother Max with the aquarium and made a tennis board and rackets. When I wanted a pair of pants to wear to a class party, then he used mommy's uniform material to make a white pair of pants for me. When I needed a house, he built it for me.
Amen.
When I had problems coping with 3 children, Tina found a home with my parents, and he became her daddy. I know he cared for me. I'm a teacher, and about a month ago, I discovered that the majority of children in one of my high school classes had no breakfast before coming to school. I could understand how some parents could allow their children to leave home without a meal. And I told my students of a time when I left home without eating. I told them how surprised I was when Tony, my eldest brother who was teaching at my primary school at the time, came to get me. My father had given instructions that I needed to return home to have my breakfast. After telling the story, the children had strange expressions.
Really?
They were really surprised. But my father's actions spoke of a level of care which I have long appreciated. Even Tina, my daughter, will tell stories of him having breakfast, making breakfast for her when she was in high school, and being her wake-up phone call while she was at school in Kingston. They developed a close bond, and he was very protective of her. That he was a stickler for details. Everything bothered him. And he was always issuing instructions on how things were to be done. Even Mr. Sterling, who I see sitting here now, who was doing some renovations to the house, he will tell you that Daddy, in his sick bed, would issue instructions on how he wanted things to be done.
Of course.
Even less than 2 months ago, he was still issuing instructions. This made him good at his job, but it is possible that this contributed to his high blood pressure, which eventually led to him suffering multiple strokes. In his later years, and as he battled with illness, he gave his heart to the Lord and was baptized by one of the pastors of this church, Pastor Dolores Smith. My brother Tony Adikon was privileged to lead communion sessions with our parents. This continued after our mother's passing. Tony visited the family home with his wife Diti, and as they worshipped with him, they were always pleased to witness his active participation. Our father died while he was preparing to visit the hospital in another way on Wednesday, June 4, 2025. He leaves behind 8 children: Tony, Elton, Ken, Max, Alvin, Cavell, Lennox, and Sherry, who is with us today. He also leaves behind 16 grandchildren and 9 great-grandchildren. Although he's no longer with us, his spirit lives on in our hearts and memories. May his soul